everyone. Welcome back inside Central Health Training Center for another episode of Broncos Now. As always, I'm your host, Sydney Jones. And coming up on today's episode, head coach Sean Payton spoke to the media discussing Sunday's loss to the Jets. Plus, Broncos lead writer Eric Delala joins the show for a game recap. All that and more coming up. The Broncos fell to 1-4 following a Sunday's loss at Empower Field at Mile High to the Jets. And today we heard from head coach Sean Payton as he detailed how he saw the game unfold. And he also talked about his play calling.
You know, how a game's unfolding, how you want it to unfold. We got a lot of coverage yesterday, a lot of too high look. It was hard to get down the field with what they were doing defensively. And yet I would have liked for us to have been better running the ball yesterday. And part of that, a good part of that falls on me and being more patient. Going back and looking at the tape this morning, we had some good runs. Russell did a real good job in the first half with plays that really came outside the framework of design. His off schedule either keeps or throws. But I think that's something for us to be effective right now. Our margin for error, we're going to have to be more patient and better at running the football.
Head coach Sean Payton opened up his conference call today talking about the run defense and what he saw on film versus the Jets.
Our gap integrity has been poor in all three games. We got wide yesterday on the big run. And so that's something that was the first topic this morning. In other words, this has been it's going to be tough to win games if we can't stop the run defensively, and we've got to get it cleaned up. So I'd start with, fitting the right gaps and then understanding scheme-wise what we're getting and how to restrict those holes. And a lot of it's not communication, it's technique, but that has to get better.
And offensively, coach talked about what the keys are to being more efficient in the red zone.
Yeah, look, we had two plays on 1st and 10 that should have been better runs. I mean, obviously you have to run the ball well in the red zone. You're any good red zone offense at the end of the season is able to run the ball as well as throw it. But because your passing lanes in your area to work is restricted, we have two decent runs to start drives down there that really don't materialize, and there's breakdowns in what we're doing in the running game. But I think that's the thing that, and I knew going into that game that was going to be an important number for us. So it was frustrating, but nonetheless, generally speaking, to be good and efficient in the red zone, your running game has to be efficient.
Plus, Coach Payton looked ahead and detailed how he is going to approach this Thursday night matchup versus the Chiefs.
They do a lot of things well, and quite honestly, they've found ways to win even when it hasn't gone as well as they would have hoped. And it's the sign of a real good football team, a championship team. Offensively, they're multiple. Obviously it starts with Patrick and his ability to move in the pocket. They've got a number of different targets. I think they use their personnel very well, and so you got to defend more than just one or two players. Kelsey's a big target, obviously. Defensively, they're very multiple. Steve does a real good job with pressure looks. You get it on 1st and 2nd down and 3rd down. They have a buffalo package, a dime package, a nickel package, but I would say they're pressure driven, and so you've got to be able to handle that. Those are the things that jump out. And then in the kicking game, we have a veteran in Westhoff. They do too, and Cobb, and he's had a great history of success with special teams. So those are the things that, when you really look at it, a championship team has, and they're playing well in all three areas.
Now it's time to take a look at today's injury report. Reminder, the Broncos did not practice today, so this is just an estimation. Defensive tackle DJ Jones did not participate. Outside linebacker Baron Browning, center Lloyd Cushenberry, defensive tackle Mike Purcell, safety Justin Simmons, and running back Javonte Williams were all listed as limited. Now joining me here inside the Broncos podcast studio for a game recap is Broncos lead writer Eric Delala. Eric, thanks for joining me today.
Got it, Sid.
A lot to dive into, per usual. I think Kareem Jackson, he put it best in the locker room following the game. He said this team has to find a way to put together, a full game, a full 60 minutes. We didn't see that again this Sunday. We saw the first half, offense was pretty productive. So was the defense in the first half, but then they came out in the second half and looked like a completely different team. What did you see in that regard?
Yeah, two things. First, I agree with Kareem, and Sean Payton echoed that message on Monday that they've got to find a way to put 4 quarters of football together. That's critical if this team is going to start winning football games.
Right.
Against the Jets, you had a really good defensive performance in the first half. The offense played pretty well. You look back to Chicago last week. The second half clearly was the better half. First half against Washington, first half against the Raiders. I mean, you're at the point now, I believe, where you've led at halftime in 3 consecutive home games and unfortunately haven't been able to pull those out. So you've got to make those winning plays, those key plays. And we heard Sean Payton say after the game, no one's going to feel sorry for the Broncos. No one's going to listen to what ails them or the woes that this team has. But at some point, you've got to go out there and take it. And I think part of the way you do that is you look at the first half of this game against the Jets, and Sean Payton mentioned this in both of his press conferences, and you had a chance to really put a bigger gap between the Jets and the Broncos.
Right.
1 of 3 in red zone opportunities were unable to score touchdowns in 2 second quarter red zone trips, including one where you had a first and goal at the 5-yard line. Those are chances where you've got to be able to score touchdowns. And to be fair, the Jets have the best red zone defense in the NFL. And so it's not going to be easy, but I think it's critical that the Broncos find those ways to, one, take advantage of opportunities when they have them, put teams away when you can, and then, in the second half, hold on to those leads, make critical plays. And it is a testament to the Broncos that they even had that last chance to go tie the game, considering where they were even just a few minutes before and how the offense moved the ball in the third quarter. It's a testament to how they played that they had that chance, but got to make more plays throughout the course of the game. Again, like Kareem Jackson said, put together that 4-quarter effort. And if you do that, maybe you start seeing this team win some football games, but it's critical that they find a way to put a complete game together.
Yeah, Eric, it felt like it was going to be another comeback, after Pat Surtain's interception. But, really, if you're looking at offense, these turnovers really hurt them.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Obviously, the last one seals the game there, but you have the muff punt after a 3-and-out to start the game. It feels like you've got all the momentum on your side, and the defense did a nice job there. Let's give them some credit there to hold them to a field goal. That could have been a really bad play, and instead the Broncos kind of survive it. But that's a critical moment. The Jets muff a punt there in the third quarter, I believe, and the Broncos have a chance to finally put some points on the board, and they turn around and give it right back with a fumble on that kind of reverse there with Samaje Perine and Marvin Mims. So you've got to find ways to play cleaner football, can't turn the ball over and win football games. You've got to win that turnover battle. We've talked about that a lot, and we saw – when the Broncos are able to do that, like against the Bears, for example, puts you in a position where you can win football games. But if you lose a turnover battle, it makes things hard on you. And listen, the Broncos had some chances and some bounces that just didn't go their way, which is unfortunate. You had the strip sack of Zach Wilson by Nick Bonito, and the ball bounces right back to him. Elijah Garcia has a strip sack. Again, the ball is able to be recovered by an offensive lineman. You have a muff punt that goes through Alex Singleton's legs. And then on that last touchdown, even the ball kind of just bounces. Right there to Bryce Hall, and he's able to snag it and take it back for a touchdown. So luck was not necessarily on the Broncos' side on those critical bounces, but also you've got to protect the football, and then you've got to find ways to go take it away from the other team.
Yeah. Eric, you mentioned Zach Allen and Nick Bonito, so let's look at this pass rush. I feel like that was a bright spot for this defense, specifically in the first half. I know Nick Bonito, he had 2 sacks. Zach Allen, he had a really nice game too, a strip sack, a couple of quarterback hits. What did you see from that group that we really haven't seen the first 3 games of the season?
Yeah. Sorry, I guess I gave Zach Allen some credit to Nick Bonito. Apologies,
you did.
Zach.
That's okay.
It was a nice play by Zach Allen. The pass rush was good in the first half. I think 3 sacks, like you mentioned. Nick Bonito up to, I believe, 5.5 on the season. Last year, Draymond Jones led the team with 6.5, so he's already reached that in 5 games.
Yeah.
But here's what I would say. The Broncos have to find ways to put themselves in position to get that pressure, right? Yeah. And the way that teams are running the football right now, it's hard to get teams into 3rd and longs, hard to get teams into passing situations where they have to throw the football. the Broncos have to find ways to make that happen more frequently. You look at one drive in the first half, and the Jets run the ball, I think, 9 consecutive times, and then all of a sudden you set up a 3rd and long, 3rd and goal from 7 or 8 yard line, somewhere around there, and they force Zach Wilson to throw it out of bounds. And so that's closer to what you're looking for. But in the second half, and Sean Payton talked a lot about this, about gap integrity and playing with the right technique, and saying, hey, if we don't defend the run better, we're not going to win many football games. All of that goes back to stopping the run, and then once you do that, you can put teams in passing situations. But if it's 2nd and 3, 3rd and 2, you're going to struggle to put teams in situations where they have to hold the ball, and you can rush the passer. They can get the ball out quick. They can throw these quick routes. So at some point, you got to stop the run, and then that'll lead to more of a pass rush. But yeah, early it did look good. You just, again, 4 quarters. You hope the Broncos can sustain that for a longer period of time.
Yeah, Eric, you mentioned stopping the run. Obviously, that was a big issue on Sunday versus the Jets. We heard from head coach Sean Payton earlier in the show. He talked about it. Denver allowed 234 rushing yards, and 150 of those came within the second half. So what do you think is going to be really just key, I guess, for this defense to try and improve that here within the next week, but as the rest of the season goes on as well?
Yeah, I mean, Sean Payton talked about gap integrity and the technique there. Doesn't necessarily think it's a schematic issue, more about the technique. I think guys just have to one-on-one figure it out, do their jobs. Josie Jewell mentioned in the locker room, it feels like on most of those plays where something isn't going right, there's 1 or 2 guys that just aren't quite in the right position. You've got to play as all 11. There's got to be that kind of internal commitment from each individual and from the team to stop the run. And again, it's just critical. They have to do it because I think the Broncos have now given up the most rushing yards over a 3-game stretch in franchise history. It's been a tough few weeks here from a run defense perspective. And again, if you can't stop that, it's hard to put teams in positions where they have to throw the ball, hard to get off the field in 4-minute situations at the end of games. It makes teams, when they can run the ball effectively, have a path toward victory. And so you've got to put teams in situations that make them uncomfortable. That starts by stopping the run. This week, talking about Broncos versus Chiefs, I think it's got to be more of a mental focus in terms of assignment, alignment, that sort of thing, because you can't have the physical sort of preparation that you would for a normal game when you're on this sort of short week, especially when you're traveling.
Right.
We'll see. Maybe the honing in on the mental details helps, but certainly the Broncos have to find a way to fix it some way, somehow.
Yeah. Eric, you mentioned the mental focus. Given the fact that this team is 1-4 to start the season, and like you mentioned, they head to Kansas City to face a team that they haven't beaten 15 consecutive times. What do you think the mentality of the team is right now?
Yeah, well, listen, Mike McGlinchey, I thought, put it really well, which is you've got to be a professional and you've got to work to get better. I think that has to be the focus. We heard Sean Payton say we can't think about how many times the Chiefs have won in a row. It can't be about that. It's got to be an internal focus on getting better. And, if you're the defense, it's got to be – I don't think it's a focus of, hey, we've got to hold them to 30, 50 rushing yards. And I think it's got to be a more granular focus of I've got to fill my gap. I've got to have the right assignment on every play for each individual. Offensively, we've got to cut down on these negative plays. What can I do individually to make that happen? And it's got to be a very micro granular focus with the stress on just getting better. And, we'll see ultimately if that's enough on Thursday night, but I think the key is how can this team get better and improve from week 5 to week 6 and play consistent football for 60 minutes? And even if it's not at an elite level for all 60 minutes, how can we just play consistently for that long and play good football and see where that takes this team? Because I think you've seen, Sid, when this team plays well and is clicking, they raced away from the Commanders in the first half of that game.
Yeah.
They were able to come back against the Bears. They were able to, really, the scoreboard didn't show it yesterday, but really they kind of dominated that first half just in terms of the way they moved the ball, the way they were able to limit the Jets offense. So if you can play like that, I still believe that this team can compete with anybody.
We've seen flashes of great.
Exactly. But you've got to be able to do it consistently. And so I think that's got to be the focus this week, the mentality of be a professional, improve, and just try to take a step forward and maintain that consistency. And then, there is you might be 1-4, but I do think there's always value in knocking off a division rival, especially the Chiefs.
Definitely.
I mean, even if it's just, hey, can we get rid of this streak so that we don't have to talk about it anymore? I think that would be valuable for this team moving forward. So I think those two areas of focus should have this team ready to play.
Last one for you, Eric. I know a lot of the talk in the locker room yesterday after the game was maybe that this short week, this Thursday night game, can be used to the players' advantage.
I mean, certainly when you lose, you want to go play another football game. I think the key will be to, it's great to play fast, but you have to use the time to your advantage still. And so making sure that, again, you're dialed in mentally on what this team is trying to do, both on offense and defense, and special teams for that matter. Right. But yeah, maybe there is an advantage to getting out there and just playing again. And, we'll have to see what happens. I think it's less about when you play and more about how you go out there and play. And for this team, it's got to be about small incremental improvements, playing with consistency, having the right attitude, the right motivation. All those sorts of things I think are key in trying to help you get a win. And who knows, maybe it does help to be on a short week and just kind of get that taste out of your mouth right away and just move forward. But no matter when the Broncos play against the Chiefs, it's going to be a tough test down there in Arrowhead, and they've got to have their best, I think, on Thursday.
Well, we'll see what happens this Thursday. Eric, appreciate you joining the show today.
You got it, Sid. Thanks.
Well, that'll do it for today's episode of Broncos Now. Broncos Country, thanks so much for tuning in. I'll meet you right back here on the Broncos Podcast Network and YouTube tomorrow for another episode. See you all then.